Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special Earth Day edition of Ask CCSA. I'm Dianne Squires, your host, and today I'm so happy to be joined by three wonderful panelists who are extremely well placed to discuss the topic that we are talking about today, living circular, reducing the effects of inefficient waste disposal. And sometimes we're just working away very diligently in our own corner of the Caribbean, doing great work, but not always having a chance to collaborate, to share experiences, to share learnings as we work. And we hope that this session is a really good opportunity for us to share those experiences and learnings, and also to give some great examples of how collaboration has worked in country, and then how that can possibly work across boundaries and throughout the region to move us ever closer to living circular and making our waste usable resources, right? So it's my pleasure to welcome our panelists, Dr. Judlyn Telesford-Checkley, the co-founder and CEO of GrenadaGrows, Ms. Kimberly Phillip-Daniel, Project Officer of the Environmental Management Authority of Trinidad and Tobago's Recyclable Solid Waste Collection Project, also called ICARE, and Dr. Damien King, the Chairman of Recycling Partners of Jamaica. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'm going to ask each of you to kick this off to say a little bit about yourself, about the organization or the project that you're representing here today, and what that project or organization sets out to achieve, what makes it circular. I'll start with you, Judlyn.
First of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. I am Judlyn Telesford-Checkley, the CEO and co-founder of GrenadaGrows. Now, GrenadaGrows is a waste-to-fertilizer and compost facility. We are not currently in operational yet, so we are in the startup phase. Our aim is to use waste, fish, chicken, biomass, such as woody products, to make organic fertilizer using proprietary technology from one of our US partners, Organolock. Our aim also is to work with a group of local partners, which we are so excited about because everyone so quickly jumped on board to be part of this such an important cause. We also a public-private partnership in collaboration with the government of Grenada, the Grenada Solid Waste Authority, and then ourselves, in addition to other partners that I could get into later. So happy to be here to talk about GrenadaGrows.
Thanks. Welcome again. And Kimberly.
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone, again. So the project that I'm going to be speaking about today is the Recyclable Solid Waste Collection Project, also known as ICARE. So this project is basically a passion project, one that encourages love for the environment. It is a pilot project aimed at the recovery of post-consumer beverage containers, right? Basically to reduce their disposal into the environment and subsequent pollution and waste management problems that arise. This project is executed by the Environmental Management Authority through funds secured by the Green Fund. It is national in scope and it's currently in its 7th year of operation. And it has conveniently made it possible for citizens to make the right decision as it pertains to waste management. We have established over 701 collection sites in Trinidad, 39 in Tobago. We have assisted in the establishment of 2 pilot collection depots in Trinidad, 2 material recovery facilities, 1 in Trinidad, 1 in Tobago, and we have collected over 3 million bags thus far, which is the necessary feedstock to drive recycling in the country. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And Damien.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Recycling Partners of Jamaica was established 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, with a single mission, which is to collect the save from the waste stream and from improper disposal some 80 to 85% of the plastic bottles that are produced and consumed in Jamaica. It's a consortium, it's a charity, and it is formed as a consortium of all the manufacturers with the imprimatur of the government to take on this exercise. And we are now in the process, 5 years in, we are now in the process of increasing our capacity, of upscaling to be able to meet the tremendous desire that we are seeing in Jamaica for people to recycle.
Damien, I want to stay with you for a moment because the private sector partners that you've mentioned or alluded to, they're all responsible in a great way for the plastic beverage containers and so on that RPJ is moving to recycle. So what inspired this collaboration between these private sector partners like with Cinco and CPROD and others to start RPJ?
Yes, and PepsiCo in Jamaica as well, Grace Kennedy. These companies actually have a history of trying to take responsibility for the waste that they produce that precedes the establishment of Recycling Partners of Jamaica. And so it really is in recognition that it's a growing problem, it's a huge environmental problem, and it was best tackled collectively rather than individually by each of the manufacturers, who of course are competitors in a different way. And so they saw fit to adopt a report that was produced a few years before by the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, which I'm also involved in, Capri, and to take on themselves the responsibility of trying to deal with the problem of plastic waste, of improperly disposed plastic waste, rather than waiting for the government to take action.
Right. And you mentioned something there about, we're talking about responsibility. And I know that on your website, you'll say you're an extended producers organization. Can you explain exactly what that is?
Well, it means that the producers, the bottlers of the beverages and the consumer items that come in these plastic bottles are extending their responsibility beyond how it has been narrowly and traditionally defined as just manufacturers and sellers. And so they are extending the responsibility to the entire product cycle. And that is why they have found themselves responsible for and contributing to. They are the ones that finance our operations. So they are contributing to extending their responsibility to the entire product cycle.
Mm-hmm. And how has the government been brought into this partnership? So you start with the private producers who are then extending their responsibility throughout the chain. How has the government then been brought in?
We consult with and collaborate with the responsible ministry. We have been doing so from the very beginning. And they do assist us with, getting regulatory approvals for the depots that we have to open and the redemption centers that we need to establish our network of collection points.
Great. Kimberly, I want to move to you because iCare, as I know it's called in Trinidad, that has also benefited from partnership. I know there's a partnership between the Environmental Management Authority that executes, but also the Solid Waste Management Company of Trinidad and Tobago. Tell us about that partnership and how that has helped to ensure the successful implementation of iCare.
Okay, so the iCare has partnered with SWIMCAL, as you mentioned. So SWIMCAL was noted as a recycling authority by then Minister Camille Robinson Regis. So the project partners with SWIMCAL. SWIMCAL takes the feedstock that the project collects. So from our 701 collection sites, the pilot collection depots that I mentioned earlier, and one of the material recovery facility located in C-Lots, all our items go to them to process the items.
Great. When we talk about implementing this, so Judlyn, I'm going to come to you in a minute on this, but are we talking just about the partners and employees who are in these organizations, or are we spreading it wider to volunteers? What is the involvement of any volunteers in Damien for you, Kimberly for iCare, Judlyn, I'll come to you next.
So we have engaged a lot of our volunteers through our activity Nationwide Cleanup, where we empower citizens who come to us and say, hey, I want to conduct a cleanup in our environment. And that is really approaching it by a grassroots approach. So those impacted by flooding, those impacted by littering, and they want to clean up that community, we empower them through education, we empower them through resources. So we would supply bags, sometimes rakes, etc., and even assist with the collection afterwards. So the communities, the volunteers, they partake in the cleanup, and we support them technical wise, we support them via resources.
Mm-hmm. And Damien, similar thing?
Yeah, that's a good takeoff point, because we do exactly the same thing. That an organization or a community will contact us to say they want to do a beach cleanup or a cleanup at an event. And we provide them with gloves and bags, and also bring our trucks to take the waste away afterwards. And we'll even participate ourselves. In addition to that, a lot of what we have done so far is simply identify, dense communities, residential areas, schools that themselves have an interest. They want to recycle. And so we deliver a cage, we install a cage, and we clear it regularly, essentially at no cost to them. In fact, we put money into their account based on the amount of plastic that we collect from them.
Okay, you mentioned money there, and I'm going to come back to that soon because we want to dig into that. Judlyn, now while we're still talking partnerships and the people that it takes to make something like this happen, while GrenadaGrows, you're leveraging partnerships for solid waste as well. The waste that you're dealing with is quite different. So in the case of iCare and in the case of RPG, we're talking plastic containers. For you, that's quite different. So what motivated the choice, one, of the kind of waste you wanted to target, and the choice of the partners that you wanted to work with to launch GrenadaGrows?
This is very important, and I like that question. I chose 3 words. It's opportunity, necessity, and passion. Necessity in that, I'll start with opportunity then, in that we have a landfill, so opportunity and necessity, a landfill that has about 4 years left in terms of capacity. 40% of the waste that goes in there is organics. And so the solid waste on their end, they need to find a solution. On our end, we saw a need, or we saw a place where we can utilize waste that's being thrown out. So we have our fishermen, we have the fish markets, that's fish waste. And as a gardener, I know the value of fish waste. And so that has been thrown into the ocean, which is another environmental issue that we are going to tackle just by taking care of the fish waste. The chicken waste, the chicken farmers currently are responsible for managing their own waste. So we're talking dead chickens, dead carcasses. If you're a processor, everything dealing with the processing chain from the blood to the chicken parts, they're not allowed to bring it to the landfill. So they either have to incinerate it or bury it or find other ways of managing it. So we're here at that as that middle man to help solve all these different problems. And so that's the implementation, and that's why we chose the partners. So our partners are also the fish fans, because they too have an issue with their fish waste. So we're able to take that from them. The chicken farms. So, and then you talk about volunteers. On our end, it's not necessarily volunteers, but one of our key partners is Adult and Teen Challenge Grenada. They deal with teens and adults that have gone through the prison system for petty crimes. They help rehabilitate for drugs and alcohol. And so people passing through their programs would need a start-off point. We could help with training. We can help with helping them go through the system. They're also involved in agriculture, so they have farms. They would be using our products, and we'll also be, it's a in and out relationship. Another key partner is UV St. Augustine in Trinidad, their food and agriculture program. Because although we have a product, we'll be using a product and a recipe that's already been tried in the US. We're happy to partner with UV St. Augustine to help us test these products here in Grenada in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture. So we'll be testing the products in the propagation centers and with a pilot study with different farmers. So it's different. It's a big collaborative approach. Later on, after we were established, we were looking at helping the fishing communities, right? These are the ones that are going to be giving us their fish waste. We want to be able to give back to them as well, incentivize them to continue giving. So it spreads out. It's going to be communities. We talk about community gardening. So we have a lot planned. Yes, it's different, but selectively, it's all about utilizing waste that's just been thrown out.
Excellent. So I want to talk now about collections and logistics, because between the three projects, that seems to be the bulk of the work, and also about the partnerships and the stakeholders that you need to be involved there, who helps to make this happen, and some of the challenges that are encountered in implementation. And Kimberly, I want to turn to you first, because I think of all the three projects, iCare has been around the longest. So how has this been managed for the iCare project, and who have you had to work with most closely to get over some of those collection challenges and problems that you may have encountered along the way?
Okay, so as you mentioned, iCare has been around since 2015. We have collected over 3 million bags. We have engaged private haulage contractors to conduct our cleanup exercises and our haulage from our established collection site, which is 701 collection sites, right? This project, we have identified that the budget needed to conduct transportation is large, right? And this is what the project has assisted Trinidad and Tobago with, to provide that necessary haulage to carry the feedstock necessary for that processing, right? As I said, we have partnered with private haulage contractors. So we have 5 haulage contractors, because we have divided Trinidad into zones. So we have Port of Spain and environs, Arima and environs, Chaguanas and environs, San Fernando and environs, and Rio Claro and environs. So we have a different haulage contractor for each area. Some of the challenges that we have definitely encountered with regards to haulage would definitely be overflowing bins. Because, for example, this is a public project. So the bins that have been established is for generally households and public use. Some private organizations tend to, even though they have a recycling program, they tend to utilize some of our iCare bins, which is fine, but that tends to have some kind of overflow, which would then put an additional strain on our haulage contractors to then visit that bin more frequently. So, for example, we have bins located in Trin City Mall, for example. That bin would have been usually cleared once per day, but then now have been turned to twice per day due to the amount of recyclables received there. Another challenge that we have received is the items that have been deposited at the bin. You know, even though we try our best to do so many communication and so many messaging to say what is our targeted items, we still end up with some general waste. We also end up with some non-targeted recyclables. Even though they are recyclable items, for example, cardboard and paper, our project don't focus on that item. So our haulage contractors have that additional before they can put it on the truck, before they can carry it to the depot.
And just for clarity, what are the items that you do accept as part of the program?
Sure. So our project focuses on beverage containers. So the 4 types we focus on is plastic type 1, glass, Tetra Paks, and aluminum cans, right? We have tried to make recycling as easy as possible. We were supposed to establish 45 collection sites. We moved to 144, right? So that has definitely put a strain on our budget and our haulage contractors. But as I said, it is a passion project and it does encourage love for the environment. So it's really about trying our best to meet the demand. I mean, persons have been asking for curbside. We haven't been able to go that route. We have assisted regional corporations who do try to do pilot curbside collection to make recycling as convenient as possible. But as I said, convenience is key. So we ask persons to you don't have to segregate your material. Just place the 4 items I mentioned in the same bag and place it in the bin, and we handle it from there.
Well, Damien, I see you were nodding quite a bit, and I saw some nods from Judlyn as well. You want to talk about your experience with RPJ and collection and all the logistics involved, Damien?
Well, the reason why I was nodding is because all of us are sort of get into this because we want to have less environmental waste, less environmental damage. We all live on islands, and so the impact of poor environmental management is actually much more present. There's not a lot of places that we can dispose it. The plastics that go into the waste stream basically end up on our beaches. So the motivation is that But once we get into it, the first thing we realize is that what we have taken on is really a humongous logistical exercise. If you consider, I mean, just taking plastic bottles, but it applies as well to aluminum, it applies as well to glass. If you consider all of the manufacturers have a logistical operation to get what they produce from the factory to all of the retail outlets. Now, from the retail outlets, the product gets splintered amongst the population. So our job is to do all of that logistics somewhat in reverse from far more collection points. You know, there are more households, there are more consumers than there are stores and shops. So it really is a humongous logistical exercise to get all of these individual containers back into one location. And I have to say that of all the challenges that we have faced since we started on this exercise, all of the bottlenecks, all of the unexpected problems have come from the logistical side of it.
Mm-hmm. How are you trying to get over some of those challenges? I know Kimberly mentioned the financial burden that it is, and I know, Kimberly, that initially the Green Fund of Trinidad and Tobago got ICARE off to a start. And certainly there must be financial implications for how the logistics can become quite burdensome. So Kimberly, in the case of ICARE, has it just been the Green Fund? How have you been managing to sustain this financially? Damien, you can tell me a bit, and then Judlyn, I'll move on to you because your case is slightly different.
Yes, so the project is still funded by the Green Fund of Trinidad and Tobago. The project does have an end date. We are looking at possibly 2025, possibly, but it is a pilot project, as I mentioned in the earlies. It is a precursor to the deposit and refund rules and the waste rules from the AMA, right? What we have done to be able to ensure some kind of sustainability to this project is to empower other NGOs, empower other CBOs, empower other entities to be able to take over this project, to be able to show that recycling is possible. Because what I want to mention is, as I said, it is a precursor to the deposit and refund rules. So the 3 million bags that we have collected is under no kind of legislations, under no kind of rules. The public voluntarily participated in this project. And that is what the project was set out to do, to show that recycling is possible in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, so to summarize, the project is still being funded by the Green Fund of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you so much. Damien?
So in Jamaica, we're actually funded by the bottlers. They contribute $1 Jamaican per bottle manufactured. And that allows us to be able to pay for and put the infrastructure in place and to operate it for now. We, so far, and we're still sort of at the beginning of this, because Jamaica produces and puts into the marketplace something like 800 million plastic bottles a year. And we're only collecting now something like 17% of that. But it has been increasing, and as we increase our capacity, at present capacity is the bottleneck, is the constraint. We're getting more bottles than we can actually process. And what has been encouraging is that so far, once we put a facility for collection in place, which is to say, if we open a redemption center, or if we just place a cage, as we do in public places, we place a large cage, 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet, and people who separate at home and bag their plastic bottles can just come and deposit it in the cage, which we put on the sidewalk or in schools or at gas stations. And that response has been quite strong. So this is up to know how we're going about it. And we haven't started emphasizing paying for the bottles that much at this point because the voluntary contribution has been sufficiently large to exhaust our capacity.
And Judlyn, I want to get into how you see the process of collections going for GrenadaGrows once you get off the ground, and listening to both Kimberly and Damien, some of the logistical problems, either that you may now be popping up or that you foresee. and how those will be managed and overcome?
What I'm grateful for is part of our partnership agreement with the Solid Waste Authority is a strategic location right adjacent to the facility on their property. So that is part of our partnership agreement. And so they would continue collecting the waste as they currently do today. In addition to that, they would add woody biomass. GrenadaGrows, we're going to collect the fish and chicken waste, which primarily is going to be from our fish markets. And then we'll set up some sites at the fish plants. So logistically, and because of the recipe we need for our product, currently, it's really the woody biomass, the fish and chicken waste. Although we do see some logistical issues, and we're learning from people who have been ahead of us and our colleagues here. But I think because it's already, the collection system is already established with the Solid Waste Authority, instead of them dropping it at their yard, they will take it over to our yard. Now, for future expansions, we're looking at having household sorting because we would like to go into food waste and really do more around the communities. But to start off, we feel like we have that initial setup thanks to our partnership with the Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority.
Okay, understand. For all of you, we can have the best intentions to recycle and to get the public involved and so on, but it takes commitment from people, this effort of time and energy and all that, and they have other things to think about. So there's the question of incentives. And Damien, I know that RPJ has implemented a bottle deposit return system. Explain how that works, what the incentive offers, and if you've encountered any challenges there, or how that's been going, what you've had to change as you develop that system.
Well, let me start by putting that in context of the overall strategy. We expect our success at collecting the vast majority of bottles that are produced. We expect our success to be based on 3 elements. The first one is convenience. The idea is to allow people who even have the most modest of commitment and sense of civic responsibility and are not willing to make much of an effort to be able to make their bottles available for recycling without going out of their way. So this is the idea of placing these cages, which we really can't produce fast enough, along people's natural commuting routes. So I mentioned earlier gas stations, schools, business complexes, large residential complexes. It will be right there in the complex. So convenience is the first element. The second one is, we have found that a lot of people in the society are actually eager and are willing to make a fair bit of effort to recycle. But not everybody. It still remains a minority. So public education and marketing is the second element. That we have an advertising and public education campaign that is always running and is making the case for why we need to take on plastic recycling as a national objective. And only the third element is the financial part, that we pay at present only a really modest amount, which is which is 50 Jamaican dollars per kilogram. And that is low because we have not yet exhausted what we are getting from the first 2 elements. But as we go along, and the people who want to are doing it, and the people who just find it convenient are doing it, then we're going to be raising the amount we pay, the deposit refund, to create such a financial incentive that people can make small businesses out of collecting plastic and bringing it to us.
Interesting. Kimberly, I want to move over to you. You have made it very clear that ICARE is all about voluntary responsibility of the public and so on. But has there been any discussion about incentives and, in getting to this voluntary, the sense of responsibility? What kind of public education have you had to do, and how much effort have you had to put into that?
Okay, so yes, thought has went into providing a refund. Not under this project, of course, that is under the legislation that I said is still they're still doing some collaboration on it. There is a private sector project I know is being run, probably similar to what Damien is speaking about in Jamaica, with bottlers coming together to provide an incentive. I think that is just in the Port of Spain zone right now. I think it's still a pilot project. But in terms of ICARE, yes, it's based on volunteer participation. It is based on love for the environment. We have engaged in over 901 touch points for sensitizations, communication, education, and awareness. So from television ads, radio ads, we went into schools. Of course, with these schools, we did experience some fallback when the whole country went virtual, because what we found in schools is you really need a champion. You need a champion in schools. You need a teacher that's going to take over. You need something that's going to be engraved in curriculum. Because, for example, if a teacher is the champion teacher, or let's say a Form 5 student, let's just say, for example, is the champion for recycling and pushing the entire school to recycle, and then that teacher leaves or that student leaves, then what is going to happen to the education with recycling in schools? So there's definitely a push. That is something that we recommend. That is something that we learn from our project, that recycling needs to be probably in the curriculum for schools to ensure that schools utilize the bins properly, because what we did in schools, we placed indoor bins and outdoor bins to assist them in waste management. We placed bins next to general waste receptacles. So it's not like, oh, I'm only finding a recycle bin, so I'm going to throw my box of food in there, you know. You have to make it as convenient as possible, as simple as possible for everyone. We even engage in temporary collection sites. And when I say temporary collection sites, big events, for example, CPL, Carry Festa, Diwali Nagar, to show persons that, you know, you can have fun, but you can also recycle, right? Because we have seen photos, we have seen images of after an event, the trash that is left behind, right? We do have a small team, so we rely a lot on social media. So we push a lot of videos, television, radio interviews. We have done competitions for different age groups to allow students to do little art project. We had a I Love campaign that I would love to mention about. In 2019, we launched this I Love campaign for persons to show national pride in the environment. And we have engaged local celebrities, influencers, as you would like to call them. And they partook in that campaign for free, which is not something that you would normally see, right? And they showed how they can implement recycling in their homes very easily and push that messaging. So we really rely on a lot of engagements for commemorative days. For example, we will do different pop-ups at malls, at supermarkets, etc., to just engage the public as much as we can now that the country has opened up a lot in this end of COVID stage. So we can more do a lot of pop-ups and engagement with the public, which is great. And at that point, public gets to engage with us, and you know, we give out some of the bags that we use, because we tend to use more transparent bags. So when our haulage contractor collects from the bins, they can see that it's recyclables and not general waste, which helps with that sorting exercises at the bin, right? So we give out bags, we give out, persons love to get tokens, reusable shopping bags, different things. So that is how we engage public to continue to push them in volunteering in this project.
Great. And I can attest, because I have watched a couple of videos, to be honest, and I've learned a lot about ICARE through those videos. So,
Nice.
it definitely worked for me. Judlyn, you're probably not at that stage where you are into a huge public awareness or education program. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But what are the plans and works? Because certainly you're going to want to get the word out to farmers and others, and then as you go along, households and so on. So let's talk incentives and public education for GrenadaGrows.
Absolutely. So I am an environmental scientist and a Grenadian. And so GrenadaGrows isn't just about creating some fertilizer and compost to sell. I studied environmental science because I really wanted to come back to Grenada after living in the US and studying in the US to really make an impact. So public education model, and we also have a strong give back to Grenada mission, is to reach everyone. So initially, when I start talking to people about fish waste, we throw the fish in the sea, the fish gonna eat it. What's the big deal? On the same end, we hear fishermen saying, "Oh, I don't catch this type of fish anymore. I mean, I used to get this type of fish and that type of fish." And because we haven't done enough studies in Grenada and the Caribbean on a whole as to different fishing dynamics or species diversity, we know as scientists that our species diversity changes by throwing waste into the ocean. It doesn't just disappear. And yes, some fish may eat it, but it causes a whole different set of dynamics that pushes some biodiversity, some species away. It may bring in less desirable species. So by talking about these different things that people don't often look at, on the soil end, right, we are producing an organic product. We want to get people to switch from using synthetic fertilizers to organic products. And so part of our mission, again, is to educate people as to why synthetic fertilizers are bad, not only for your soil, but for the environment. It leaches into the water. It affects our oceans, our water quality, so many different impacts. And we walk on the ground, we don't even pay attention. It's just soil, right? No, we have a whole different set of life that's happening in our soil. Products help to feed our soils, right? It helps regenerate it. So it's a whole mix of tackling food security. We want to get our youth back into agriculture again by partnering with ATCG, Adult and Teens Challenge, other organizations, UE, people that we're engaging to get involved because our youth are moving away from agriculture. So as you can see, it's far-reaching incentives. Part of our mission, again, one of the things I was lucky enough to have done a consultancy in the fishing sector for a year. One of the things we got from our fishermen is resources, help. So we want to partner again, help with training, help with providing supplies. But a key element of it is helping build fish cleaning sites across the island, because although fish on the landing site, so there are places to land their boats across the island, but nowhere to clean or to throw the fish waste. So by giving them these resources, they could see the benefit that we're not just here to make some money. It's a holistic approach, and we're here to really tackle some key events in partnership with others. So everybody wins in working together.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Damien.
If I may, I just want to thank Judlyn for that, because I learned so much in that intervention just now. Because as you were describing it, the ocean around our islands is an ecosystem. And if you're throwing back fish waste into it, you're changing the incentives. You're disturbing the ecosystem. And people wouldn't realize that.
No.
And if you disturb the ecosystem, then you're going to get different outcomes.
Exactly. Yeah. And the blue economy is a big deal right now, right?
Absolutely.
Utilizing that.
As I said, because we're islands, so we need
a very big deal for our islands. Ladies and gents, I want to move on to how you measure success. I think, Judlyn, you touched on all the work that you want to do now and some of the impacts that you want to generate. But I want to talk about what those impacts look like. What does success look like for ICARE, for RPJ, for GrenadaGrows? How do you measure that? Kimberly, I'm going to jump back to you, and then Damien and Judlyn again.
Sure. So as I said, the project was set out to provide the necessary feedstock for recycling. So we have collected, one of the ways that we have ensured success with the project is we have collected over 3 million bags, right, which is diverted from our overburdened landfills, which shows these discretionary effort willingly expended for sustainable waste management. In partnership with SwimCall, I can state that between the period January 2018 to September 2020, approximately 681 metric tons was processed into bales or flakes. The interest to collaborate with the project from large-scale organizations, as I mentioned, even carnival entities, so for example, Tribe and NCC, showing the interest in persons and organizations to recycle in absence of any legislation is a way that we measured success for this project. Even though we touch mainly on beverage containers, And e-waste is something that we touched on slightly in this project. We would have partnered with local NGO to refurbish 502 e-waste units to be able to then, when that item is refurbished, it can then be donated to persons without those sort of items. We have buy-in from local celebrities, as I mentioned, influencers for our I Love campaign. And as well, we won the IDB President Award in 2019 for service excellence to our stakeholders. We would have gone with our roving offices, as I said, to malls and supermarkets to make recycling as convenient as possible. We have partnered with regional corporations with their pilot curbside collection to be able to make that easier and possible for them.
Great. And Damien, what's success look like for you and impact?
You know, it's very simple for us. We're focused on plastics, and in particular on type 1 and type 2 plastics, which is PET and HDPE. And I mentioned that we produce some like 800 million SKUs a year. Our objective is measured simply in the percentage of those SKUs that we collect. And we're currently at about 17%, as I mentioned earlier. We want to get all the way up to, 80-85%. And thereafter, so collecting is the main goal. Ideally, all of that also has to be processed into new, useful, constructive product of one sort or another. But the main goal is to collect and keep it out of the waste stream.
Great. And Judlyn, what will impact and success look like for you?
So I'll also start off with collection, because although we're starting off with our fish markets and those are that readily accessible, we want to also go into the different farmers. There are a whole slew of them that are, we call them longliners, right? So they go out at sea and they spend 7-8 days. We want to be able to capture their waste as well, because they throw them out, and these are the really big catch. So that's success there. But the biggest is because of the use of our product would be buy-in from farmers. We know as soon as we mention organic, but right now it seems to be changing. But generally you hear, oh, that thing don't work, I'm not getting enough yield. So we know to start off with our farmers, it's going to be a challenge. We already have some people signed up for pilot projects. So we know that's going to be an emphasis there to get them to buy into using and to switching completely from synthetic products to using organic products. So that would be a huge success for us. And then even the households that would start understanding the impacts of managing the waste, right? That it's not just about the government. And it's not the government's role to manage waste, it's all of us. And it's our country pride, as someone mentioned earlier. So really working with these local programs in a collaboration with different organizations, because we really don't want to do it alone. There is power in partnership, right? SDG 17. So really that's going to be the goal, is to have that whole thing where they have different bins and they're used to that. And I want to also contribute in their little way as much as necessary. So that's success for us.
Thank you so much for that. Damien, Kimberly, I'm actually coming back to you. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So what I wanted to mention, and Judlyn mentioned this, is waste management is not the government problem. And even though Trinidad, it doesn't have a deposit and refund system as yet, it is based on us. It is based on you to ensure that waste management is done, right? And I love to make mention of the story of a bottle. So for example, if I throw a bottle in the drain, a lot of persons will think, oh, it's just one bottle, but everyone does it. What's our problem? And I love to tell persons that if when after flooding and you see those horrendous pictures of all these bottles washed on shore, washed in person's yard, if instead of seeing the label of the bottle, you saw your name, you would act completely different. If you would see, okay, Kimberly bottle, oh my gosh, Kimberly bottle located, I'm located in Faisabad, but my bottle end up quite Port of Spain, let's say, and I am the reason why that happened, he would act completely different. And that's part of our communication message, that in the absence of legislation, it is you, it depends on you, the generations to come. What if in the generations to come, persons don't have trees, persons don't have on some of our shores we have seaweed. What if instead of seaweed it's filled with plastic bottles? would you still go to bed? Like, think about the generations to come, and then your actions will change.
We only behave the way we do because we get to throw the plastic bottles in somebody else's backyard. If everybody had to throw it in their own backyard and see it piling up, we'd behave very differently.
So it's definitely that sense of personal responsibility and your own responsibility for what's happening. I want to move to the lessons that you've all learned, and especially because we're talking about collaboration and sharing across boundaries. There are others out there who see this and want to learn from you, certainly want to start their own projects or organizations or figure out how to do things better. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned so far that you'd want to share? And Judlyn, I know that you're in the startup phase, and a lot of other people may be moving towards that phase as well. So I will start with you.
I think the key one for me is not being afraid to knock on doors and asking questions. And so for GrenadaGrows, it started with me observing fish waste. I work in the fish market. I look outside and throw out fish waste. And I immediately started making calls. Some people may have been intimidated by going to the government and saying, hey, I have a solution. But you'd be surprised that so many people are there waiting, and they have their challenges as well. And in having that one call, I remember calling a chicken farmer, and he said, I was just sitting on my phone, on my computer, trying to Google solutions for my chicken waste. And you just called. So not being afraid to knock on doors, because there are a lot of people that are out there that may want to join with you to solve to help solve the challenge. But also don't give up, because it's a process, right? We're going to meet some stumbling blocks, but that just forces us to sit back and reevaluate. I can't tell you how many times, if I show you our business plan when we started about 1.5 years ago to today, it has evolved so much. And because we had this one stumbling block here, but it gave us the time to reevaluate, to go through it, to further refine the process. And so it's not an easy process, and I'm sure everyone knows that. But one, don't be afraid to knock on doors. There are other people out there that are just still ready and willing to help, join you in the process, and don't give up. It sounds simple to say, but when you're in it, it's really a challenge.
That's what it takes. And Kimberly, key lessons learned from having a big national pilot project like iCare.
So as mentioned by someone else before, I can't remember, partnership is definitely important. You can't do it on your own. You have to be willing to partner with other entities. For example, we're a partner with different NGOs that assist in our communication. The Toko Foundation, for example, Cashew Gardens, other regional corporations. Partnership is important. Also, yes, we all want to recycle, but there are other 2 R's that is equally important. So start to do those before. Reduce your intake, reuse what you can, and then your last effort is to recycle. Even though this project is a voluntarily one, legislation will then further push persons to engage in proper waste management. And as I mentioned before, the curriculum in schools, children are our next generation. We definitely need to be able to educate them to perform the right activities, to engage in proper waste management. So definitely engaging in some sort of recycling curriculum and providing the necessary support is important.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Damien?
The exercise that we're engaged in is a private responsibility, but it's a public issue. So it seems to us that one lesson that comes out of it is that it has to be a public-private partnership. The government has too many responsibilities to take it on its own, and probably doesn't have the logistical capacity. That's sort of something that the private companies have much more experience in. And at the same time, in the spirit of extended producer responsibility, the private companies have to have a role. So the lesson that we would want to pass on is that the way to set it up is as a public-private partnership, and you take advantage of what each side brings to that operation, and that increases your likelihood of success and buy-in.
Mhm. Do any of you think that there's a possibility you can expand your solution beyond your own borders? So yes, you can share the lessons and so on, but is there any opportunity for that? And how do you think that that can happen? And I think any one of you can volunteer if you feel that you'd like to speak on this.
Sure, I'll jump right in. Absolutely. Every island has a waste problem. We're challenged with space. And so our landfill here, they're challenged with space. Finding a new site is an issue. And so we already have plans. We have as I mentioned, our company, our partner, Organolog Technology in the US, we've already agreed to scale this across the Caribbean islands. But it's not going to be a case where we make and export. It's not environmentally friendly. It's not efficient. But to work with each island and use these different key partnerships, so the Waste Authority and different organizations, it's going to be unique to every island, but utilize their fish waste. Everybody has fish waste. They have chicken. So we're already looking into that. We already have a model set for the different Caribbean islands because we know, and we've already spoken to different leaders. Yes, it's totally scalable. And it's something that every island needs. And so, absolutely.
Thank you, Judlyn. All right. So if no one else has anything to add, this discussion, I think, could go on for a bit, but we do have to close. And so I want to thank you so much for being here, Damien, to you, Kimberly, and Judlyn. Want to congratulate you all on the progress that you've made so far and give encouragement for continuing this. Of course, the CCSA is also working to encourage a lot of collaboration across the community to be moved to a climate smart zone. So I'd like each of you to say how people can follow the journey. Where would they have to find, an RPJ or iCare? Where can they find out more? And how can they contact you if they needed to? Judlyn, go ahead.
So we have a website, it's GrenadaGrows.com.
Great.
You can contact me at JudlynT@GrenadaGrows.com. GrenadaGrows.com. And so happy to have this opportunity, by the way, CCSA, and giving us this audience.
Fantastic. Kimberly?
Sure. So as I mentioned, this project is being executed by the Environmental Management Authority. So for further information, you can always visit their website, as well as the project has a Facebook page, iCareTT. You can always contact us through that medium, and we'll be sure to assist you in any way that we can.
And Damien?
Our website is recyclingja.com. All the information is there. Our operations are laid out quite clearly, and you can contact us through the website and see how we go about doing what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to those who have joined us for this special edition, Earth Day edition of Ask CCSA. Our panelists have been wonderful. There are clearly exciting things going on across the region, and we're looking forward to sharing more of those stories and hearing more about those collaborations that are really helping us to make living circular a reality. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to our audience. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye all.
Bye.